We're back, and so is Rod Martin, I'm very pleased to say, the chairman of the board of the Institute for the American Future, of which I'm proud to serve as president. He is also the author of an extraordinarily formidable, series of reports and also blogs. It's to be found at rodmartin.org. It's called the Rod Martin Report. You can also find his myriad interviews and commentaries there, and I strongly commend to you that as a resource. Rod has a background in entrepreneurial activity, notably a member of the founding PayPal Mafia, which was quite an extraordinary group. Rod, it is great to have you back, especially given some things that are very much in a dynamic mode at the moment, and I'm anxious to get the benefit of your free-range thinking on what is happening. It's good to have you with us, sir, as always.
Good to be here.
Let me start by asking you about this government shutdown, which as we speak is impending. There does seem to be a Mexican standoff, if you will, taking place between President Trump, on the one hand, the Republicans, who insist on a clean continuing resolution, as they call it. The Democrats want to make some changes to terms of the big, beautiful bill. You have written about this at your blog at rodmartin.org to the effect that the Democrats are right where Donald Trump wants them, in a box. Let us know why and what this all portends for the American people.
I honestly can't fathom why they're being this stupid. I understand the thought process, but I still just marvel at it. And the thought process is pretty straightforward. We've had government shutdowns, for decades off and on, and it didn't matter who was in Congress versus who was in the White House. The Republicans always get blamed by the media, 100%. So, when Newt Gingrich's crew came in after the 94 election, they thought they could shut down the government and the president would get blamed because that had always been what happened. This had happened under Reagan several times, and Reagan always got blamed, and they foolishly thought this was because he was president. The executive branch would get blamed for this. Guess what? The Republicans got blamed for it no matter which end of Pennsylvania Avenue they were on. So Trump is the first one to actually win one of these. And what do I mean by that? Well, we had a shutdown, actually the longest shutdown ever, around Christmas of 2018 into January of 2019. And of course, the media did everything it could to spin it as this huge debacle for Donald Trump, but it wasn't. The polling was clear. People actually blamed the Democrats for it. And Trump is emboldened. He looks at it as, I can win this. And the Democrats didn't learn the lesson because they watch MSNBC. So you would think Chuck Schumer would actually read a poll, but that's not what's happening. So where we are is the Democrats have been given a clean CR. They can just fund the government for another month or two. Everything's fine. We passed the appropriations bills. We're not quite to regular order, but we're approximating it. So, we're in the right direction. Go Speaker Johnson. And they're turning it down because they will tell you simultaneously in schizophrenic leftist fashion that Medicaid for illegal aliens is illegal and that never happens. And also, we're going to shut down the government to force Donald Trump to fund it. And are you kidding? It's impossible to win that. There is no way. So yes, Trump is set up on the politics, but he's also set up on the practical consequences, because I promise you, Russ Vought, our friend who is head of the Office of Management and Budget, and by the way, a good Southern Baptist guy, I just love him, and he is Elon Musk's successor leading Doge. He's had a plan for how to use a shutdown like this for 5 years. He knows exactly what he's doing. And so one of the things, but probably far from the only, is the president gets to deem who is and is not essential. Essential workers stay. he's probably going to remove just a staggering number of federal workers that he's going to deem non-essential in a way that no prior president has been willing to try. And then he's not going to hire them back. So even if we fill those positions, it'll be the Trump administration filling those positions, and we probably won't refill a lot of those positions. So Schumer and Jeffries are just walking the plank here, and it's just unfathomable.
So, Rod, let me just make sure I'm clear about this. You're saying that if the president lays off large numbers of federal employees on the grounds that they are, well, non-essential, that the gnashing of teeth and the wailing that will take place in the federal bureaucracy, of course, and in the political, constituencies in which those people reside, notably, in Northern Virginia, you're going to find that this is net going to be positive for Donald Trump, negative for the Democrats, and not harm the American people who benefit from various services of the federal government, not just going to national parks and the like.
Well, Trump is pretty savvy about this stuff. And of course, Obama was also. Obama came in and shut down all the national parks and national monuments when he had a shutdown because, he wanted to inconvenience the tourists and spread discontent, and they'd go home and be mad at the Republicans. And he knew what he was doing. Trump is looking deeper than that, but he really doesn't have to look far for the politics. The politics is simple. They are willing to shut down the government to fund Medicaid for illegal aliens. I mean, oh my gosh, why not just also give money to Kilmar and maybe the killer of Irina Zarutska? Let's just fund the burning of a city or two. It's absurd, and it can't sell, and the public is against them on that. There will be fallout. It'll be day-to-day on some of the specific aspects of the shutdown. But the headline problem just totally works against them. And they are hostages to their left-wing base if they will allow themselves to be put in this position.
Well, this will be fascinating to watch play out. I have the feeling that, the gnashing of teeth piece of this, which is going to be dominating the news, will have some, ameliorating effect as far as the Democrats are concerned. But overall, it does sound to me as though it's a loser. Speaking of burning cities, and I did want to turn to that if I can with you quickly, Rod. The president is now set, it appears, on putting U.S. military personnel, National Guard specifically, in Portland, Oregon, in addition to Memphis, Tennessee, and obviously hit him in Washington, D.C. until recently. There's talk about Chicago and other places. This is being predicated in part, at least, on the fact that Antifa, which he has designated a domestic terrorist organization, is, torching the places, or at least besieging things like ICE centers and the like. Talk a little bit about, first of all, the constitutionality of what he's doing. It's being decried as illegal by mayors in these places, Democratic places, needless to say. And more to the point, the practical effect it's likely to have, sir.
Well, they certainly didn't decry it. Well, maybe the old Democrat segregationists decried it, but the people who are decrying it now certainly weren't decrying it when Dwight Eisenhower sent the 101st Airborne and federalized the Arkansas National Guard to protect 9 black students trying to enter Central High in 1957. Those troops occupied Little Rock for 18 months, and it was completely legal. And it was legal when Bush did it, and it was legal when Reagan did it, and it was legal when Clinton did it, and it was legal when Obama did it. And all these people are just lying. So the legalities are pretty clear. These troops have no police powers per se. They can detain you, but then they have to wait for a police officer to come and actually determine whether there's probable cause for an arrest. Only the police officer can arrest you. So what you're doing is you're putting a show of force on the streets. Obviously, if there were some kind of hideous crime in process, the troops could do something about that, but they don't have police powers. So this is just augmenting manpower, and it's forcing local police to actually do their job, which they haven't done in some of these cities. So we've seen this work actually incredibly effectively in DC. We've seen it work very effectively in Memphis. Now we're going to Portland, which has been held hostage by Antifa for about 5 years now, and it's got to end. And you'll notice Trump is not counting on the Portland police here. He sent in a ton of federal agents, and they are arresting Antifa right and left all of a sudden. This is a godsend. Portland has been the nerve center of their movement for some time. If you actually lock some of these people up and put them on trial and actually convict them of the things they're guilty of, which include Antifa tried to burn down the mayor of Portland's apartment complex with him and a couple hundred other people in it. I mean, these are terrorists. These are horrible people, and you can understand why the Portland government, which was already sympathetic to them, doesn't want to buck them.
Well, they don't want to buck them, I guess, because they're afraid of them. But on the other hand,
Yes.
they're getting torched too. This is crazy. Rod, we have to take a short break. We'll be right back with much more with the great Rod Martin. Please stay tuned. We're back, and so is Rod Martin. And I wanted to introduce our next topic by giving you a little context on two things that are happening in the course of the day today. The day that Secretary of War Pete Hegseth chose to gather hundreds of generals and admirals in Quantico, Virginia, the flag of Communist China will fly over our nation's birthplace in Philadelphia. Unfortunately, the whole country may one day be flying China's flag rather than our own if American leaders don't recognize that the Chinese Communist Party is determined to destroy the USA. And with ongoing funding from Wall Street, it has been inexorably putting into place the capabilities needed to accomplish that goal. President Trump says they'll discuss at Quantico how well the military is doing. But there must also be a frank discussion of the need for comprehensive and innovative efforts to prepare for a possibly imminent Chinese onslaught, likely starting with fifth column operations inside America, thanks to Joe Biden allowing in tens of thousands of People's Liberation Army soldiers. Well, Rod, I wanted to get your thoughts on two things. One is, as a member of our Committee on the Present Danger China, of course, you have been very, very actively engaged in the debate about the Chinese threat and the extent to which it has now metastasized to the point where we actually do have, by some estimates, 100,000 Chinese soldiers inside this country. On the one hand, and on the other, you've got, speaking of Democratic mayors, that of Philadelphia, running up the Chinese colors, I think over City Hall today. There's something dreadfully wrong with this picture. I'd like to get your thoughts on it, any insights you might have about the importance of talking about the Chinese threat as a paramount agenda item in the meeting today in Quantico.
Well, we don't know that there are 100,000 Chinese troops in America, and that's the problem. We don't know that there aren't. And Joe Biden opened the border. We have roughly 10 million people illegally came across in 4 years. No vetting, no idea who these people are. In the middle of COVID, nobody's screened for COVID. You have to wear a mask everywhere. You have to get a vax, all this horrible stuff. You have to be locked down. But these people can just come and do anything they want. And that tells you the seriousness of the Biden administration about COVID. It had very little to do with the disease. And that's our problem. We don't know who came in. We could have half of Hamas here and we wouldn't know. We could have Chinese spec ops in 50 states and we wouldn't know. And we know that China has been buying up land near military bases all over the country, which is horrifying because we just saw what you can do with that. You know, maybe your viewers all get it. Most people in America haven't thought this through, but we just watched Ukraine do something very similar to that. They smuggled drones into key parts of Russia and attacked Russian bases in places that they absolutely don't have any normal range to attack. So the Chinese are buying up land next door to key military institutions in the United States. Are you kidding me? And thankfully, we have states like Florida that are passing laws to eliminate that, and that's all good. But there's a real problem here. It's going to take a while to clean it up. And the fact that anybody would raise the communist Chinese flag over their city just boggles my mind. This is a regime that has murdered 65 million people. This is a regime that carried out the worst purges of the entire 20th century, which is saying a lot in an era of Pol Pot and Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler. And we're acting like these people are our buddies. It's insane.
Yeah. Rod, and back on the drone point, it's not as though this is just a hypothetical problem. We've had drones overflying military bases as it is. In fact, in some of the most sensitive real estate in the country, in the area of Newport News and surrounding parts of eastern Virginia, I believe it was 17 days during the Biden administration in which unidentified drones were operating every night, flying over airfields and, naval facilities and the like, with impunity. So if any one of those drones that had, I don't know, thermal grenade on them, they would have created chaos on some of our most sensitive assets. So the fact that this is taking place, and by the way, you're absolutely right. We don't know exactly how many Chinese soldiers are here. We do know that the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol processed, I believe it was at least 25,000, mostly men of military age, coming in unaccompanied, wearing similar backpacks and the like, moving in some cases in units of about 15 people. A tell for anybody with a lick of sense that those are soldiers. And that 24,000, as you said, is just a fraction of the total number that came in. And that doesn't even take into account the gotaways. So my point is this, Rod, that the United States military, I have the feeling, is not taking seriously this internal threat. And if, God forbid, these guys are ordered to light this country up, as our friend Gordon Chang talked about on this program yesterday, you may well not be able to do a darn thing about projecting power into the Western Pacific or any place else. We're going to have our hands full here at home. Again, should this be a very, very high priority for our military planners, do you think?
It absolutely should. It should be just in general. I mean, after 4 years of keeping the border almost completely open, and it's not like it was closed before that. Trump did a pretty good job in the first term, but the Democrats did everything they could to obstruct him. And we had 8 years of Obama where, yeah, he actually deported a decent number of people, but he let far more in. And, he's doing everything he can to find loopholes to let them stay. So this is a very real security threat. We don't know who's here. We know they're illegal. We have legal tools to remove them. The Supreme Court has been pretty good about backing Donald Trump on using those tools, and we just got to get it done. And, Trump is also looking, I don't know what, oh, I'm sorry.
Hold the thought. We got to take just a short break. When we come back, I want to visit just a bit further on that, and we'll pivot to the Middle East. Stay tuned, folks, for more with Rod Martin. We're back, and so is Rod Martin. I'm pleased to have him with us always, but I'm particularly pleased when we have as much to cover as we do today. Rod, you are being, as usual, very, very, I think, well, I call it free range in your thinking about a lot of things. And in particular, I wanted to get your update on the Middle East. The president has, as we've been talking about, brokered a deal at least with Israel and with a lot of Arab nations as we speak. Hamas has not yet weighed in, and there's some indication that they're not happy about the terms of this deal. Give us your flavor of whether this is going to bring, as the president seems to hope, peace to the Middle East, to say nothing of Gaza itself.
I think it's important to look at what Donald Trump does and not so much what he says. No, I don't imagine Hamas is going to like this deal. They may get pressured into it. It is not impossible that that could happen. But you heard what Trump said. It was, and if you don't take the deal, Israel's going to finish the job. Okay, that's the plan. That's the actual plan. And that's what you got right before the Iran bombing. Before the 12-day war. Trump is out there, saying, I gave him a 60-day deadline. Today is day 61. How do you like it? And here come the Israelis and blow them up for 12 days, and then we finish it with Fordo. And, now we're blowing up TDA drug boats off of Venezuela. We've actually got the Iwo Jima off the coast there. Your viewers understand what that is. That's an amphibious assault ship. That's a Marine Expeditionary Force sitting right there, and a bunch of other assets. So I don't know what Pete Hegseth is talking about to our generals and admirals today, but I feel pretty certain that top of the list are the real danger we're facing from China, which includes internal, and certainly includes domestic terrorism, a lot of which is financed and possibly directly from foreign enemies. Venezuela, Gaza, and Ukraine. And, it's the same thing in Ukraine. He's been saying, okay, Vladimir, we can do this the nice way, where we invest in Russia and we do things to make everybody money together peacefully, or I'm going to give Ukraine a ton of offensive weaponry and I'm going to shut off your cash. Well, the cash is getting shut off. The Ukrainians have done a fantastic job of blowing up about 17% of Russia's oil production capacity. The Chinese and the Indians are just nuking Russia. They're kind of raping them, honestly. They're paying about half of market price for that oil, and they're just Putin has to take it. He doesn't have anywhere else to go to market. And, they are not friends. Anybody who thinks there's an alliance there needs to pay attention to how China's treating them. China is acting as a neo-colonizer. So, in all these things, we have real threats that are about to ramp up, potentially simultaneously, and that's probably why all these guys are at Quantico. But coming back to the Middle East, I think probably Israel finishes the job, and ultimately, you can't let Hamas survive. I mean, there will always be people in sympathy with Hamas, just as there are people who are in sympathy with Adolf Hitler. But you can't let that, as an organized political force, continue to exist and expect to ever have peace.
Amen. Well, we will be watching all of this very closely, as will you, Rod. We look forward to a further visit with you. But before we let you go, I did want to ask you about one thing. I'm prayerful that Israel will finish the job, but I also am very prayerful that something it calls Iron Beam will be very effective against, drones, among other things. Tell us a little bit about it. You've written on it recently at rodmartin.org.
Yes, we have a deep dive on the implications of Iron Beam up yesterday at rodmartin.org. I encourage everybody to take a minute to read it. This is extraordinary. I mean, we're actually leaping into the Star Trek age, and what's extraordinary about it is it's not experimental. The Israelis declared it operational here about a week ago. And what it does, Let's just bottom line it. Everybody knows what a laser does. And I will just say up front, you're going to have to add a lot of power to it to be able to make it an offensive weapon or even an effective anti-ballistic missile device. But here's what it does. If you have a Tamir missile, which is the backbone of Iron Dome, you're spending about $70,000 a shot. If you have an Arrow 3 or Patriot Pack 3 and you're shooting down bigger incoming, that's about $4 million a shot. If you shoot off those lovely anti-ballistic missiles we have sitting in Alaska and California, that's about $70 million a shot. Iron Beam is $2 a shot. You actually make defense orders of magnitude cheaper than offense. And that's a world changer. So eventually, when you add small modular reactors to this, when you do some additional things to soup it up, you're going to replace most of our offensive weaponry too. But you've got a real possibility in the relatively near term of effectively obsoleting nuclear weapons. Because, okay, maybe you can put one on a freighter and blow it up in Charleston Harbor. I saw a TV show like that years ago. But you can't actually hit the targets you need to hit. You can't sail a freighter to a missile field in Wyoming. And if you're depending on suitcase nukes, that's not going to be a strategy, and you're going to have to think twice about a launch. You're just going to get annihilated if America has a reasonably good chance of shooting down most of what you hit us with, and that's the real implication. Golden Dome, not 1.0, but 2.0, is going to be heavily laser-based, and by the time you get to 3.0, it's probably going to be laser dominant on the ground, in the air, on ships, and in orbit. And it's just going to completely change geopolitics.
It will be fascinating to see this develop, Rod, not least because of questions involving countermeasures. What do the other guys do to try to defeat those lasers, shielding and the like? But it's measure, countermeasure as ever in warfare. But this does sound like an extraordinary breakthrough for the Israelis, and praise the Lord.
And for us,
hopefully it will be very helpful in defending the Jewish state and maybe us too. Rod, we have to leave it at that. Thanks for joining us. Come back to us again next time, folks, if you will. Until then, go forth and multiply.